So welcome everyone. You are at a deep dive presented by Entrepreneurs Forever, and Amy, our presenter, gets credit for the title here. Are you spooked by the prospect of, a Halloween theme? Lots of people talk about the idea of bringing interns in to help in their business, and they get gun shy for good reason. There's a lot of traps here. So Amy, who is actually a member of one of our Entrepreneurs Forever groups, said, I'd love to present on this. And my job here is to come up with great subject matter that we think our small business owners can benefit from. So that's how we came by this topic today. We are recording, except at the end, we will stop the recording and the Q&A, the things you want to ask about your business that you might not want memorialized forever, will not be recorded. We'll do some introductions, tell you a little bit about our organization and some upcoming programs, and then we're going to get right to Amy. So if you've joined us and you go, what is Entrepreneurs Forever? How did I end up here? Well, we are about empowering small business owners to grow thriving businesses, to sustain their families and their communities. And we do that with monthly peer support groups. And as Leonella and Amy were talking about when we first came on, they're in two different Worcester groups. We have about 35 groups now. My name is Deborah Gallant, and I am the Senior Program Manager at Entrepreneurs Forever. I'm also the facilitator of two of our groups. Amy Mosher will tell you a little bit more about herself in a moment, but she runs an organization called Visions Internships, and she's going to be our presenter in a few minutes. I'm just going to be the gadfly helping her along. Before I hand it off to her for today's presentation, I know that by the end, we won't remember to come back and do this. I've learned this by the hard way. So I wanted to talk about what our upcoming programs are before we get started, so that you can make sure that you know about them. We have a talk about getting certified as a minority or woman-owned business. And if that's something you've been thinking about and not sure if it's right for you, going to be a really powerful program with a presenter from I believe the Pittsburgh Transit Authority, who knows a lot about certification. And then we have a really terrific Forever Forward on November 10th, Am I Properly Insured? And you will be able to ask an insurance specialist whether you have the right insurance. And if you think you don't need to have an insured business, you're wrong. Everybody needs insurance. Our business to business peer-to-peer program has information sessions weekly. There's even one tomorrow. If you'd like to learn more, you can sign yourself up. And before I hand it off to Amy, I'm going to say this presentation does not take the place of professional advice from your own paid advisors, because this is meant to give you a taste of the topic. But if you're going to bring on interns, you probably need either Amy on a professional basis or a lawyer or somebody to make sure your paperwork is right. That's always our advice. So without further ado, Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about you before you go to sharing your screen and doing the presentation? How did you come to be doing these internship programs?
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with me here live. And if you're watching the recording, thank you so much. I know you guys have a million other things as a fellow business owner that you could be doing right now with your time. So I promise it will be of value. So Deb, how did I get to this journey? I would say, it's been a wild ride, but I would say, I've got over 20 years of professional project experience in for-profit, nonprofit, government. And before COVID, I was also a professor for 5 years at a larger public institution in Worcester for 5 years, and a smaller college in Worcester for 2 years. And again, before COVID, I said, oh my gosh, so many of these young people. And I had the privilege of teaching over 650 college students. And I said, wow, these are incredible young people. They have so much talent and excitement, but very few are actually graduating with real world experience. So I really started by basically quitting my 2 teaching jobs as a social entrepreneur to start this business and to revolutionize internships as we know it, especially since COVID. Things even got more crazy. I'm sure you guys know young people that COVID hit when these young people were 19, 20, 21. They may have even gotten their college degree, but they almost felt like it was a shallow credential because they really, especially with COVID, were not clear about what they were doing with their degree. They didn't know where to start. It was all very overwhelming. We all know that young people in their 20s don't love to get advice from their own parents. So the whole thing was very overwhelming. And then the more I got into this, it just became clear to really work to support the businesses and organizations as well, because we can train and connect young people all day long, Deborah, right? And everybody, I'm sure you can relate, but if there's no infrastructure to support the organization, it's really a mutually unfulfilling and less than effective experience. So it just became clear I could really make a difference here. And that's really what you guys will find out about me is I'm, before it's all said and done, I'm really here to make the biggest difference with as many people as possible. I very much value the social entrepreneur and the word entrepreneur. I'm all about helping people and planet, and I'm really excited to have created a business model that I can really do that, because we do tend to focus on social impact organizations. So yeah, just excited to be here, and thanks for being so open to this topic. And I tried to make it a little fun as well. I do have I joke, a mandatory fun type approach to facilitating. So hopefully
Well, if
you'll
you're going to deal
find it
with young
enjoyable.
people, if you're going to deal with young people, you better have a sense of humor. You're going to need it.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. So thank you for letting me be a little creative with the title, and it's been really fun to collaborate. And I love to serve my fellow E4ever folks too.
All right, so Amy's going to do the share screen and present from her computer. I did just share the handout. It's really just meant to guide you along the conversation and give you some resources. So use it as you see fit.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, everybody, for being here. Here is our fun sort of theme here. Do you ever feel like spooked out? Like, oh, that's in theory, that sounds so brilliant to have interns help with all the things I need to do as a busy business owner. But like, where the heck do I start? Am I the only one that isn't sure where to start or what to do? It seems like other people know what they're doing. So you are not alone, my friends. I just want you to know that it is a great idea, but it does need to be customized to fit what you need. So we're going to look today a little bit as to if you were to move forward and develop a small and growing internship program, what would you want it to really achieve for yourself and your organization? So it does need to be customized for it to be useful. I'm sure you guys can agree with that. And what I like to say, a sustainable internship program means it's not only customized, but it's well oiled, meaning that there's a lot of systems in place to make sure that it actually works for you and it's not going to feel like a second job. So, so this whole idea is how to really consider a well-oiled internship program, how it can help grow your small business so that you don't have to feel spooked out at any time of the year. You can do this, okay? So let's move along. And yes, I am the founder and CEO of Visions Internships, and we did launch our first programs, just so as my fellow entrepreneurs can appreciate. I had about an 18-month runway up to launching my business, and we launched our first programs in December of 2020. And for quick context, we learned a lot from our client organizations over the years, and we now have, I think, what appears to be a better way to help people and just really simplify. And guys, if you get nothing else from this today, the idea of this is a potentially complex topic. So what I want you to just think about and maybe even jot down is the idea of what's available to you when you can simplify to multiply. And you can use that in any area, but I'm going to bring that concept up a few times. So while this can feel complex, potentially overwhelming, like one more thing that a business owner doesn't have time for, just consider that there's really something to be said when we can simplify to then multiply our impact. Simplify the systems and processes to multiply our impact. So keep that in mind. And I am committed here today to help you navigate what can feel like a complex world of internships. So you are in the right place. And today we are going to cover the following things. And I do want to say, if you haven't already guessed it, I am really most interested in making this most useful for you. So I'm going to go through my slides. I don't love to teach based on slides, but I have them just for additional resource. But please feel free to literally drop anything in the chat at any time. I am very good at rolling with it. If it doesn't fit at that exact moment, I will come back to it, but please feel free to interrupt me politely throughout the session today. I want to make sure that this is the most useful for you. So we're going to go over some key concepts regarding internships today. We really want to focus in on some pitfalls, some misconceptions, and then also some best practices, some things that you may not know you don't know. And that's completely normal, right? It's in our blind spot where we're like, oh, if I could just, I'm sure you've all heard it. Maybe you've even tried it yourself. I'm just going to bring in that one intern. My cousin's son needed an internship program, and I'm going to scoop him up and see what we can get done together, right? So those are good. It comes from a great place. You want to help that young person, and that young person wants to give to your company. But there's so many pieces that need to be put in place for it to be mutually fulfilling. So hang in there. We're going to learn also how to really leverage interns in a way that sets both them up for success and you up for success. Otherwise, like Ben and Jerry says, if it's not fun, why do it, right? So we got to make sure that we're both benefiting, meaning you, if you do move forward with interns, and the interns, of course. I'm going to really harp, this probably should have been my number one, is I want you to just be able to ask any and all questions. So even though we are going to save more time at the end, if you guys feel like there's a burning question that could also, help others here, even if it's going to be captured in the recording, I'm okay with that. But like Deborah, said, please, if there's something specific that's sort of like you're requesting advice or consulting, even, I'm happy to give that today toward the end. But if you have questions that are just general questions that you think can help the flow, please feel free to weave them right into today's presentation. Okay, so ask away. And then also one of the things that I feel like I would be really helping you is to start to think about what does it mean to assess if an internship program would make sense for your organization? Remember, this isn't just to give back, although we love to give back to young people and society at large. This does need to also have an ROI, a return on investment for you. So what kind of criteria might you want to consider to see if you yourself, it might be a good growth strategy for you? That's the idea. We want internships to be thought in a little different way as an actual growth strategy for your business. Okay. So without further ado, I would love for those of you who are here, if it's safe for you to do so. And of course, if you're driving or if you're, doing what you need to do, safety is always first, my friends. But I would love for you to take yourselves off mute, unless you've got that loud barking dog, but please take yourself off mute. This is your space. And I would love for you to just briefly, if you can take 30 seconds apiece and just say your name. Please tell us briefly if you just want to say the name of your organization or a brief one-liner on what your organization does so we can hear that and capture that. That's always good for networking. And then most importantly for me today is really, what do you most want to learn? What would make the biggest difference for you? Maybe one burning question, right? And I'm sure there'll be lots, but what's one thing you'd really love to learn today?
Okay. So I'm gonna just call on people in the order that I see them on their screen. If you can take that 30 seconds, that would be so helpful for both me and Amy. Leonela, will you go first?
Yes. My name is Leonela Gonzalez Fogarty. The name of my organization is English for Life Network. We guide Latinas, executives, and entrepreneurs to speak English with confidence so they can share their talent to the world. And what I want to learn is how Interns can help me with create a database of all my my students, to keep track of their progress. And also, can they help with social media?
Awesome. So Lena, I'm really impressed. And you guys, there's no comparing here, but I have to just acknowledge you. That's really amazing that clearly you've been thinking about this, right? So good on you to not only be, you guys, how we think about so many things and then we actually take action and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually getting support that I would love and deserve. So I love that you've been thinking about it and you took action, and it's so wonderful to see you again. And I feel so happy that when you said where we met, I'm like, oh yes. So thank you.
All right.
I took note.
Remy, are you in a place you can talk?
No, I can speak. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
We can.
Thanks, Remy.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Remy Alley. I'm with brave.org, where we train anyone in conflict management who in turn manage the conflicts of others directly on our website. And I've actually worked with thousands of interns,
Wow.
and it's very beneficial. However, I am looking for specific interns that have great endurance, particularly for marketing, traditional and social, and also or digital, and also fundraising. So those are the types that I
Awesome.
am particularly looking for. Thank you.
That's great. And
Thank
Remy,
you.
I bet we're going to circle back to you to hear some of your experiences later as well.
Absolutely. She said
Absolutely.
thousands of interns. That's phenomenal. Did you say Brave, like BRAVE.org?
Yes, without the E. So because there's an accent, but when you're looking for it, it's www.b as in boy, R as in rat, A as in apple, V as in Victor.org.
Got it. Thank you so much, Remy. I'm so
Thank
excited to
you.
know you here. Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you. You too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jacqueline, you're up next.
Yes, I'm Jacqueline Bonsalakis. I'm the owner of Diamond Therapeutic Arts. However, I am opening up a health and wellness retreat home called Labor of Love Health and Wellness Retreat Home. And look, in a short snippet, I guess I would say if you think about Airbnb, but it's focused on health and wellness, and it's
Beautiful.
directed for that audience. My question kind of would be like having interns to help with finding funding resources to get it started, as
Mhm.
well as funding for those who want to go but probably can't afford it, like when I get up and running. So things like that.
Got it.
Finding funding.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Is Labor of Love a nonprofit organization?
No, it's not.
Okay, that's okay.
Yes.
Great. And so Jacqueline, you said Diamond Therapy, so you have two businesses, is that correct? You have one and you're starting a second?
Well, the Labor of Love Health and Wellness Retreat Home is under the
Got
umbrella
it.
of Diamond Therapeutic Arts.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
Yes.
Maria, are you somewhere that you can share? You're muted.
There you are. You're super smiley, but still muted. Let me see if I can. You're
Nope,
on, my
still,
dear.
still muted, Maria. Maria, you still
Sure.
muted. Gotta hit that button, the microphone button.
There
Oh.
she is.
There you go.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, and I can hear you. Sorry.
Okay.
So I grow apples. I'm a farmer, and I'm my business. I grow apples. I make hard cider and apple cider vinegar, and I grow herbs. And I'm 100% a one-woman show, and I could really use some help. My biggest question is like, I don't know, what kind of like a structure do I
Yeah.
need to set up in order to like get an intern? We have a very reputable food studies program at one of the universities here. I know
Awesome.
I could go through them and I'm connected with them. I just don't even know like where to start. Yes, I would love to have somebody. I just I'm very, naive as far as this goes.
Well, you're in the right place
You're in
then.
the right place. And I love how you asked about the structure, the infrastructure, right? The systems, right? Because the one-off can actually be more painful. And then you're like, wait, what just happened? They're gone. And then wait, they didn't capture their process. So thank you, Marie. That's wonderful. And I love that you're a farmer. And my daughter, who's 6, we're just talking this morning. She's like, there used to be more farmers, weren't there? And she said, the farmers that are here now, they're really important because there's less farmers now. And I was like, wow. So we just had that conversation this morning. So thank you for being a farmer. I love that.
Of course.
All right.
Yes.
And our
So-
last person right now is Mary Chen.
Yeah.
Mary, are you someplace you can unmute and share?
Hello, this is Mary. So we are doing K-12 online education. So it's pretty new for me join this meeting. So I want to learn more.
Oh, thanks, Mary. Well, I'm an educator for many, many years, so all the different grades, and I love that you've got the online education. I would love to hear more, but thanks, everybody. It just so happens we all seem to be social impactors here, aren't we? You see what, and I didn't even market it like this, right, Deborah?
I don't know if apple growing has a social impact.
Oh,
I guess
yes.
it does.
Oh,
All right.
Of course. All right. Thanks, everybody. That makes a huge difference. So I hope this is going to be, again, entertaining. So here you are. You're like, yes, this all sounds good. Where do I start? And then I'm like, oh, wait, but first. So can you relate to this, my friends? And in your sharing, I have a sense you can. So are you, the person in your seat, in your shoes, are you working on some big things, but you're feeling like stressed out, kind of maxed out, like your to-do list keeps growing? Anybody feels like your to-do list just keeps growing? And you're like, how on earth can I do the one more thing? Okay. And it's like, oh my gosh, no end in sight. And then maybe like you have shared, you've thought about getting interns to help, but like not sure where to start. And PS, even if I found them, it would take more time to train them and when and how and all the things. And then maybe in the past, anybody here ever, and actually I know it was Remy, I believe, that said she had worked previously with thousands of interns. Has anyone ever worked with interns in any other role in the past, like maybe not your own organization? I know most of us are running our own businesses, but maybe have you ever worked with interns in a previous role? Did anyone ever, were you ever an intern yourself just a few years ago, right? Okay.
Just a few, just quite a few.
Yes. Okay. So you have a sense of it, but it's like, okay, maybe like, maybe there was some past experience or you knew somebody who had worked with interns probably before COVID. A lot of internship programs have, we'll just say, dissolved or morphed dramatically since COVID. So that is something to keep in mind. You're not alone and you might be able to relate to this. Now, I hope you guys can hear this, and this, I hope we are ready to laugh. This is me doing a really fun role play. Ready?
Great news, Amy.
Can you hear? Are you serious?
Yes.
I feel like I just hit the lottery. Thank you so much. Oh my Lord, this is incredible. Who are these young people? What do they even know?
Amy, we lost the sound. I think it's when you muted.
Hey, what's up? This is awesome, but I really can't take them. I'm not going to have time to work with these interns. But you know what? I'm going to bring this opportunity to the staff meeting on Friday, and we'll see who else can use the help. But thank you so much.
Okay, I guess, thank you.
Okay, can anyone relate to that feeling? I had to show it. I had to show it.
It's
All right.
cute.
Whoops. Oops, I just hit the wrong thing. 1 second. Let me stop sharing, get myself back on track. Got all excited and I lost my way. Not now. Okay. All right, everybody. Sorry about that. So anybody get something? Could you relate to some piece of that video? If so, what piece of the video could you relate to?
Well, I remember when I was an intern back between high school and college, and I worked in an ad agency. They called me an intern. They basically had me reorganize the file room because no one knew what to do with me. It was, I mean, I hope things have gone further than that, but that's what it was like many moons ago.
Oh my gosh, totally. All right, guys. So you're not alone. There's a lot of what we'll call common concerns about working with interns, and I've labeled them the 5 T's. So number 1, talent is, how do I find the right people? Where are they and how do I find them? The training piece. Sometimes, especially if we're sort of more of a solopreneur, sometimes we're lacking our own internal training systems for ourselves or our one part-time employee, for example. And oh my gosh, well, if we don't have that in place for us, how are we going to plug in the young person and what training will we use to actually train them? How specifically will we use them, right? Needing it to be targeted, because if we try to plug them into every area, they might get overwhelmed themselves. So we need to make sure that we're able to focus on a specific area and train them appropriately. Now the team, now this is a little bit more if you're a larger organization, but a lot of organizations are thinking, well, who from our team in terms of our paid staff capacity, how are we going to be able to divert that staff capacity to do something like supervise interns on a more, even part-time, not to mention full-time basis? Who on our staff is actually going to supervise them? So that's a really important question. We will revisit that. The tech, so you may or may not know, but there are technical and especially legal requirements. And I'm going to make sure that everybody knows that in order to call a program, even a small initiative, an internship legally in the United States, there is this umbrella organization. You probably have heard of the United States Department of Labor. So they actually do have a Fair Labor Standards Act that we're going to reference. It's a particular form, and I'll leave that as a resource for you. But we need to know what these technical and legal requirements are. And then just a quick question. This isn't to put anybody on the spot, but in terms of tech, there's always the struggle of, tracking our own progress. Does anybody here struggle sometimes with tracking your own progress in your own business? Right? It's very common, very common. And so does anybody here use a particular project management software, whether it's Asana or Monday or Basecamp, or maybe you do spreadsheet style or notebook style? Maybe you're doing, right? You have some kind of system. It's not for me to judge. Okay, I struggle with some of these things too. Although, I've got my own systems. There's no right or wrong system per se, but it needs to be consistent. And oftentimes you don't necessarily know, especially if there's aspects of your internship that are going to be virtual, which is very common today. You want to figure out a way to technically track their progress so that you don't get more overwhelmed. Okay. And then number 5 is has come up so much, and I want to know if anybody can relate to this. And I'm actually curious about Remy's experience, having worked with thousands of interns in the past, is this idea of turnover, right? So sometimes you finally find this diamond in the rough, and he or she, they're gone, right? Typically, internships are more short term, and we're going to talk about a lot of the different terms, concepts. Sometimes they're thrown into what I call the internship ABCs. But internships tend to be shorter. They tend to be about 10 to 12 weeks. 12 weeks is pretty typical. Now, if it's maybe a little different over the summer, but it's still typically that 12-week stretch. And if it is during the school year, tends to be part-time because they're juggling school and internship and usually work as well, right? And if it's during the summer, it can it's more so could be full-time, but we need to look at compensation in order for that to be an equitable opportunity, of course. So turnover is really important. How can we minimize the inevitable turnover with the model called internships? Okay, so let's just pause for a second. Is there any of these 5 T's that really stand out in terms of a concern you've had? Maybe you haven't put words to it yet, but one of these is particularly concerning, or maybe something else that we didn't talk about yet is a concern or a hesitation about moving forward with interns for you.
Yeah, for sure. The team part, like who would supervise, who would, spearhead the program.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't feel like I can take on another job, although I realize the value of an internship program.
There's so many people can relate to that. Thank you, Maria. Okay, let's all take a breath. I know I need to, sometimes when I get really passionate, I'm super passionate about this, as you can probably tell, I need to remind myself to take a breath. All right, my friends. So let's talk a little bit. This is the brain. We're going to do a brainstorm. Okay. We're going to imagine, and of course I could have provided the full list for you, but that wouldn't have been as fun. So let's start with the organizations. So we've gone over some of the concerns, reasons to be maybe a little bit hesitant, but let's now talk about the very particular benefits. There are some really solid benefits of actually moving forward with an internship program. So let's start first with organizations and leaders like yourself, whether you're running, a very small organization, a program, right? Or you're growing something bigger. Let's just think about what are the specific benefits to you potentially as an organization to having an internship program.
Anybody?
What could you imagine? Is that a hand, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
imagine that in some capacities they could promote the business, the health and wellness retreat in different corporations that I probably can't reach, like a list of corporations with the demographics that I'm trying to reach.
That's great. Yes. They can extend your marketing reach, right, through their networks. And they get excited. A lot of young people get very excited. So they're natural ambassadors. How else could an internship benefit an organization?
I already have a system like to deliver the programs, format, how to keep track of people giving feedback.
Mhm.
And, well, there's a lot of automation, and it will benefit me because I can get more people. You know, I have a lot of recordings, so show people progress. So it's a lot of creating the system and getting the information, especially with video editing videos, so I can show progress to my clients by seeing the progress.
And great. Thank you, Leonella.
I think you could get either one-time projects done that you're just never going to get to, that have been like on your list, and it's just not going to happen.
Right.
But I thought what Leonella brought up before was pretty interesting as well, which is young people are really good at social media. They're what they call digital natives. And
Yes.
those of us with gray hair may feel like we're not in touch with the other generations and how they interact with the internet and their phones and social media. So maybe you're sort of bringing a younger person's point of view into play as
Absolutely.
well.
That's a huge piece. So it's it's leveraging their perspective and being digital natives. Over 80% are like on, back of their hand, they're just doing this stuff in their sleep, right? Now, we don't want to just plug them into simply busy work. One of the things that, as somebody had said earlier about, having the infrastructure, having the appropriate systems, you want to make sure that you're plugging them in to actually moving forward. And we'll talk about this in a bit. Specific key performance indicators that will move the needle. So if we talk about social media, which is oftentimes what organizations think, oh, I could really just, get a few interns and we can rotate that role, and I could always have this extra marketing wing, which is a great idea, but you want to make sure that you're plugging them into a system and specific key performance indicators that are moving the needle. So it's not just about, oh, they're going to post 30 times a month on 2 platforms. It's making sure that those are the appropriate platforms, right, where your target audience is, and that you're looking at what would constitute a successful social media campaign. Let's say you were to have 4 just incredible social media whizzes, right? You want to make sure that they're working toward the key performance indicators, like what do you want your social media to achieve? You want it to certainly represent your brand, right? So when people see that, they see that there's, a brand in place and they can relate and resonate. But you want to make, are you wanting them to download something? Do you want them to book a call with you, right? Do you want them to do something that will grow your business? So these are the kinds of things we don't want to just willy-nilly, like grab any old intern and plug them in, because then the intern gets on that busy work and then you have to manage, and sometimes over manage, and everybody's more stressed out because it's busy work that's not necessarily moving the needle. So when we're putting together an internship program and getting back to the benefits of an organization, I'm just going to throw out a few more. So definitely their perspective on things. Not only are they very tech savvy, they bring often a new view on different ways that young people are thinking today and what motivates them. They're not looking to just do busy work. They're definitely looking to make a big difference. And we will talk about this concept of the purpose gap in a little bit. That is something that young people are looking to do meaningful work, helping people, helping planet, right? They don't want to just go through the motions, even if they're going to be receiving a stipend or getting credit, which we'll talk about as well. They also, are really versed, often, not to be too stereotypical, but in DEI and diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? They're bringing in diversity, and that is so important. Oftentimes, organizations will hire for, quote, cultural fit, and then they end up having more and more people that look, think, act, sound just like them. So it's a great way to expand in that regard as well. And other benefits in terms of organizations, it's a solid longer-term talent pipeline strategy. So if you're looking to grow long-term, right, you're looking to figure out, well, what's a sustainable talent pipeline strategy for the longer haul to grow my organization. And those diamonds in the roughs, or those young people that really wow you, can absolutely become not only great ambassadors, brand ambassadors, but they actually may become part-time or full-time employees. However, you are not obligated to hire them. You're not obligated to hire interns. That's one of the benefits to you as an organization, is that it's not a long-term commitment. The understanding is that it is a shorter term commitment. And really what you guys are going to learn in the next few slides is, in order to call it an internship, it needs to actually legally be majority benefit to the young person. So that's something that oftentimes people forget, and we'll talk a little bit about pitfalls in a little bit. But for young people, you can imagine what some of the benefits are. I'll just go through some of them quickly because that's not our target audience today, but just from their perspective, young people are hungry to really get meaningful real world experience and to get industry experts, mentors in their network to grow themselves in the opportunity, but also to connect with you on LinkedIn and to ask your opinion here and there. They love hearing from real world people, and they love being able to do job shadowing, informational interviewing, right? They're hungry to learn and grow. So those are just a few tip of the iceberg benefits of internships, but let's move along here. So this is a helpful slide, I think. Maybe I'm biased, but a lot of times organizations will say, well, how do we know if this is a good fit for me? And you guys understand, like, I am right where you are. I mean, I launched my business in 2020. I'm a largely solopreneur. I'm the only full-time employee in my business. I do have 3 part-time people on my team. We're not currently using interns at the moment, but we have when we're starting up as well. And I anticipate using interns more, especially as our company grows. So I'm right there with you. But here are some ways to think about, okay, is this a good fit for me? Because it's not the right fit for everyone, and that's okay. So this is just like a casual assessment. So kind of, you guys, you don't have to tell me or raise your hand, but let's go through this together and let me know if these feel like this is where you are and it might overall be a good fit for you. So do you have like think like more short-term project support needs? Like, are they like popping up? You're like, gosh, if I could just get somebody like on these projects and I'll just take that a deeper cut, right? Can you see a trend? In fact, just earlier in the call, I already heard people already observing what I think were kind of consistent, maybe more short-term project support needs. So that's one thing to really think about. Do you feel like building a talent pipeline, and you guys forgive me with the pipeline, I know that feels a little bit less than human. That's not my favorite word. We are talking about human beings here, building a talent pool. But would you say that building a talent pipeline is a priority for you now or in the near future?
No.
And it's okay if it's not a priority for you right now. It could be something that you're planting, the apple seed, right, Maria, in the back. It's okay. But building a talent pipeline really does need to be a priority because it is an investment of especially time, energy, some money. This is important on the bottom. Do you prefer to hire from within if you have the option? Now, if you're a 1 or a 2 woman or person show, you're like, well, within is like me. But this could be a way to develop people in your talent pool that you're not initially obligated to hire full-time. I happen to be in Massachusetts. I think some people here are as well. It's a great state in a lot of ways, but to hire the wrong W-2 prematurely, you just want to be mindful of that. You want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success when you are hiring, whether it's an intern or someone else. It is a try it before you buy it world. We all know it's a performance-based world. So you want to set up a little runway. That's why shorter term projects are wonderful for testing out interns and building that talent pipeline. So think about, if you have the option, would you prefer to hire from within, even if you are currently, running a smaller organization?
Yes.
So great, thank you. The 4th circle says that you believe that training and supporting interns is important. Now, have you made time for it? Not necessarily, but do you agree that it's important? And some people, it's just not the most important thing right now. And that's okay. But these are just ways to help yourself assess if this is a fit. And then this is really important too, right? And I know it's set up in a way you're like, okay, Amy, who's going to say they're not open to? But are you truly open to and perhaps ready for new processes and ideas to grow your organization? Right? Because anytime you guys, you don't need me to tell you this, anytime you're creating some new initiative for your business, It's going to take a little bit of time and energy, and it will, for the short term, right? It's going to have you focused in an area that you weren't focused on a month ago because it's a new initiative. So are you open? Are you ready to new processes and ideas? And I would say if you said yes to 4 or 5, this might be a good fit for you to really start thinking about internships as a growth strategy. If you're 3 or less, probably not right now, and that's fine. I just want to pause. Does anyone want to say anything about this? Is this helpful? Did something stand out, or do you have a burning question before we move forward? I'm going to make a bad joke. Not everybody yelling at each other at once. Okay, simmer down. Just kidding. These are my bad jokes. I told you to beware, Deborah. I told you. I think I'm funny sometimes. Okay, guys, we're going to move forward. We're going to talk about some key concepts. Now, you do have a handout. This is not, again, the way I teach, I just throw some things up on a slide. Take what is helpful for you. Feel free to leave all the rest. Remember, simplify to multiply. You don't need to get all this down. But let's talk about the internship alphabet soup. So we hear a lot about the different concepts, right? We hear about internships. We hear about volunteering. We hear about apprenticeships and co-ops and service learning. And there's more. But do we really know what the difference is? I think for sake of, and guys, I hesitate to put this over here just because I don't want you feeling like you have to scribble down all of this. But let me just go through some of the alphabet soup. So basically, there is a great resource. I put this in the resource sheet. It is a national organization called National Association of Colleges and Employers. It's abbreviated as NACE. So they tend to define internships as a form of, this is very important, experiential learning. It integrates knowledge and theory, and I added usually learned in the classroom, especially since COVID, not always from the classroom, because not all interns are current students, although many are. So it's a way to get experiential learning. It's integrating knowledge and theory with the practical application and skill development in a professional setting. Now, I'll tell you guys, almost all of our work since COVID hit has been virtual internships. In fact, that is how I named my company. It was initially called Virtual Internship Solutions, and that became Visions, long story short. So it doesn't need to be all virtual now, but there's aspects of an internship, especially with some of the areas that you all said you were interested in, whether it be social media, research, funding support, maybe admin, etc., could certainly be done remotely. And Maria, on the Apple side of things, right, there's the more certain aspects of an internship may need to be in person, right? And so that can happen as well. It can be a hybrid internship. It doesn't have to be one way, but it needs to work for you. So typically internships, as I mentioned, are typically about a 12-week long. They can range from the 3-month, which is about the 12 weeks, up to about 6 months. That's very typical. They're shorter term by design. They're usually 10 to 12 hours per week, especially if they are unpaid. And my rule of thumb is anything more than 12 or 15 hours, especially that is unpaid, you really want to take a look at that, because what that means is only certain people of certain socioeconomic status can afford to have an internship program. Now, all internship programs are not paid. You are not absolutely required to pay, but you do need to be mindful of federal criteria that oversee that, especially if you are a for-profit entity that is not paying interns. I want to make sure you guys have a certain resource from the federal government. You also need to be mindful of the state that you're doing business. Most states, in fact, Massachusetts has essentially adopted what the federal DOL has put forward, but you want to be mindful of where you're doing business as well in your state with any questions around that. But that's essentially an internship. It certainly can be 40 hours. If it's 40 hours during the summertime, it will absolutely be paid. It's extremely rare that you would have a 40-hour anything, summer or not, that is not paid. So keep that in mind. And then I just want to put out there, especially since COVID, because all things were just on the table and up in the air, right, during COVID, consider something called returnships. So I always encourage people to think about, who are the people that you might not assume are interested in an internship? Maybe people that are in career transition, maybe they're 37, right? Maybe they're going back to the workplace after having been a stay-at-home parent. So there's this idea of returnships that just kind of expands the talent pool potentially for your prospective interns. Volunteering, I won't go too much into this. This is probably obvious, but I'll just say it's that willfully, freely serving a community organization. It could be an individual, right? Serving from the heart, usually to forward some social mission. It could be a one-off volunteer. It could be an ongoing opportunity. Apprenticeships. I know people in the industry who even confuse apprenticeships with internships. One of the biggest differences about apprenticeships is that it tends to be longer term. It's typically, with few exceptions, although there's always exceptions, it's typically a 1 to 3 year experience, and it's typically more full time, and it's almost always paid. And it's more specific to a vertical in industry, such as manufacturing, construction, trades. It could be farming, in fact. Okay, you probably heard, right, Maria, you're like, oh, I've heard apprenticeship in farming, IT, healthcare, okay? And especially if it's that 1 year, sometimes if there is a state credential kind of wrapped in, they do have specific apprenticeship requirements, right? That it's much more specific, almost like the person has already done quite a bit of research and investigation, and they've decided almost fully that they want to pursue that as their career. Whereas backing up to internships here, internships, they're more young people, and they tend to be young people. They don't have to be, but they're more like shopping around. They're trying to get experience, dipping their toe in the water, trying to figure out what they like or don't like. And we always tell young people that, figuring out what you don't like, so long as you've given it a fair shot, is really valuable, just as figuring out what you do like, especially in that younger age group. Just quickly, co-ops, we happen to live right near Northeastern. A lot of people assume Northeastern University. The co-op structure, that is another way to get real world experience. It tends to be specific to an actual academic program, and the two different ways that people tend to think of co-op programs is that they're going to be an alternating. So maybe think about even a tech or a Voc high school, how they have more of that co-op swap where they're doing, or Northeastern, they'll do the 1 week, or it might be a longer stretch, 1 or 2 weeks, and then they'll swap. They'll do work, right? Partnering up with that employer, that site organization, and then they'll go back to academia, and they'll make ties between the two, but they'll either be alternating or there'll be parallel schedules. There could be some, depending on the scheduling, right? Parallel scheduling to achieve the co-op model. And then service learning, you may or may not have heard of it, tends to be in academic sort of realms, and that these are, again, tend to be students of various ages, and they're looking to more deeply understand, more at the personal level, like the individual level. They're learning to grow and get specific hands-on experience for themselves to deepen their knowledge in the classroom. But those are some of, I'd say, the helpful terms. Let me pause. I don't know if anything was particularly helpful. I don't want to stay in the alphabet soup because we've got a lot more to cover. But anything come out of that that was helpful? Does anybody see, is internship where you think you might want to be, or do these other ways to grow your business, does any of these other options stand out?
Let me just ask you one quick question, then I want you to go back to the slide deck. Internship, co-op program, these are things that might go through like a college or a student, employment office or student volunteer office. I assume that those people will help guide you as to what makes sense for their students and the format that they're used to. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. There's typically a career service office. Now, there are career counselors at most schools, but there tend to be, there's fewer. There are people that work in career services, and so they can be a point person, a liaison. They can give you a form or a link, what that school requires or that program requires. But oftentimes it is on the host organization to work with the young person to fill out what's required. And let's actually jump to this idea quickly of credit. Now, I do want to go back to the slide deck. So, okay. You know how sometimes you think, oh, okay, well, I'm going to start off by not paying them, which in many cases, it's okay, especially to start. But they often think, oh, I'm going to just, instead of paying them, I'm going to make sure that I help get them credit. So let me tell you guys something about credit. When a young person is in school and they're fully enrolled, meaning they're a full-time student, and it tends to be fall or spring semester. If you add in an internship program as part of their full-time load, they would not be paying additional credit in most cases. But most internships, especially when we're starting, happen in the summer. And most young people are not fully enrolled in college during the summer, which means they will have to pay out of pocket to get internship credit. So a lot of young people, especially in the summertime, do not see getting academic credit as an advantage. They actually look at it as, oh shoot, where am I going to come up with $3,000 to get these credits for the summer? Okay, so don't assume that the academic credit is a fair swap for them. It might work out if it's fall or spring because it's part of their full load. It might be under like an independent study or something, working with an advisor. So I hope that's a little nugget. I just wanted
No,
to
that's really helpful. And also, I presume if it's an academic credit program, that there's additional paperwork and accountability and reporting that you have to do. So just be aware before you go into it that that's all going to be required.
Yes, and there is a role, of course, for the host organization. You know, it's not just like, yes, it's me doing, you know, I'm hosting the internship program. There may be a role for you, most likely. But now keep in mind, a lot of times the college contacts assume that the site organization is constantly and regularly overseeing, managing, mentoring the young people. And on the flip side, right, a lot of times it's the opposite. And so sometimes, you know, the school thinks the company is providing the ongoing mentorship, and oftentimes the company assumes the school is. So just making sure that you know what your role is, especially if there is an academic credit being sought after, there may be a role for you as that site contact person. Okay, so, you know, there's a lot of different decision points: paid or unpaid, full-time or part-time, in-person or virtual. Academic credit we already covered. I want to talk for a moment about the purpose gap. So there was a study done in 2019. It was done by Gallup Research and Bates College, and this was right before COVID, interesting timing. But they determined that over 80% of today's graduating college students are looking for purposeful work. They're looking for work that is going to, in some way, contribute to the greater good. It's helping people, helping planet. They want to make a difference and make money. I'm going to pull it out, guys. I'm pulling it out. This is one of our, okay? We're all about showing young people how they can do well for themselves and do good work in the world. So young people want to make a difference, but they want to make money. They want to make income, but they want to make an impact. So a lot of times employers today are like, whether they're looking for interns or they're looking for new hires, they're like, where are the young people? Do they not want to work? I can't find them. Are they just lazy, living in their parents' basement? No, although there's always some that may fit that bill, but the vast majority are actually hungry to make a difference, and they want the employer, whether it's a site organization for an internship or their next employer, paid employer as a job, they want to make sure that that employer gets the purpose gap. They are dealing with a young person that would rather stay put if they're not going to make a difference. And now I'll just say something also about this current generation. Not only are they looking to make a difference, but they've certainly learned to speak up for themselves in many cases. They're not going to tolerate being used and abused either. There's always some, right? But that's kind of this interesting thing to kind of understand where they're at now. And that does help when you're thinking about creating an attractive internship program for your organization. And I'm sure people have heard of the concept, but I'll just put it out there. I know there's a lot of alphabet soup floating around. CSR, corporate social responsibility. So this is in that same realm where young people are looking at companies' CSR statements. They're looking at their mission statements, and they're looking to see that their values align with the organizations that they're going to give their time, right? That's the way they look at it. Their precious time, they can't get back. And of course, they're going to be learning along the way, but they do want to know that the organizations they're working for are in good standing and align with their values. Is that helpful? Just to try to get into the mindset of the young person. Okay, so this is really critical. These are some really common pitfalls, and please be aware if you do think you want to move forward, is that when you have unclear goals about what you would want your internship program to accomplish, right, it doesn't work. You need to know for yourself, why would you want to have an internship program? And you need to know, what are those specific key performance indicators? Like, how are you measuring success? How are you measuring progress of your program? It's when you feel desperate to like get help, it's easy to be like, oh my gosh, I just need to talk to my friend, her daughter, she needed something and maybe she can come in next week and help me out. Right? I'm not saying that's impossible, but you want to figure out, okay, what are we working toward here? And what kinds of systems can we put in place based on the kinds of internship program you want? So ladies and anyone watching, please don't get overwhelmed by this idea where like, oh my gosh, I have to like create systems across my entire company, right? Think about the program area that you could use some support and start with a particular system there. So if you're looking for social media, right? Do you have, a simple spreadsheet, or if you're using a software that has a calendar feature, do you have a place that you can brain dump your content ideas? And then a young person could go back and help organize, or meet with you once a week for an hour, or even a month. Once you got good, you start to do a brain dump, and that young person can be feverishly taking notes. Imagine all the brilliance that can come out of your head. They can document it with the right system, and then they can do what they need to do to design it and schedule it and make it happen, and then start to measure progress. So those are systems, if that's an area you want to move on, that are easy enough to set up. Start small, right? Get the success, take a breath, and grow from there. So the idea about standard operating procedures, a lot of us, right, in our own companies, maybe we're lacking standard operating procedures. So start with that one place. If you were to think about what's just a mini job description. By the way, ChatGPT can help a lot with customizing your job descriptions, right? Come up with one job description for one intern. Speaking of one intern, I always recommend that you have 2 or more interns because they can help each other. It reminds me, I actually have one child, and oftentimes I think if I were to have another child, maybe they could play with each other, you know what I'm saying? And I could get a little more done over here. But it's that same idea. We'll come to some best practices in the next screen. This is really important that you do not inadvertently relate to your interns as simply cheap labor that are brought on in place of regular employees. That is in fact illegal. You need to make sure it's not just to replace an employee, whether that you had a part-time or a full-time employee need, and I'll just bring in an intern instead. It needs to be that majority benefit to the young person that involves specific learning objectives, skills gained, measurable, and everybody wins. And certainly, this is probably obvious, but it's, I think, still important to mention at the bottom, assuming your interns know what to do, just assuming they know what to do, but here's the real key, my friends. And assuming that they know not only how to do it, but how you want them to do it. But it's a great opportunity to think through, how do you want somebody to do what you do so you can delegate it? Just a half page, just 3 or 5 steps. Document, what do you do that's simple enough you could teach somebody else? And what a great test opportunity for longer term hiring when you're doing this sort of thing with an intern. So do not assume that they know exactly what to do, and especially how you want it done. But also I would add to that, be open, like we had said on the circle slide, be open to maybe they have a new idea. And the more you can actually encourage their creativity, the more excited they're going to be, and they will wow you. They will come up with some really great ideas. So if they're clear about the problem you're looking to solve, and even the short-term project support you need, watch out, because they will come up with some new ideas maybe you haven't thought of. So leave some room for creativity, as well as making sure that they're trained the way you want them to do what you need them to do. All right, I'm going to get a little geeky here for a second, but this is a really important piece. When you're calling something an internship, even casually referring to somebody as an intern, you need to at least know that there is this primary beneficiary test, and it's a fact sheet that you guys will all get in. It's a link in the resource. I'm just going to pull it up real quick for a visual aid. So this is regarding internship programs under the Fair Labor Standards Act. This was updated in 2018. keep an eye on if this is updated, and keep an eye on in what state you're doing business. But this is the basic test for unpaid interns and students. So we won't go through all of this right now, but the bottom line is that there needs to be specific learning objectives, and there needs to be some infrastructure to very intentionally support the learning and growth of that young person, or really any person. Doesn't have to just be a young person, I should clarify. Okay? If you are a nonprofit, which I don't think is the majority of the people that will be seeing this per se, the federal government is a lot more loose with that, because it's, you know, it's a nonprofit, you know, they're perhaps run similarly, but we know that that model is different. So there's a more leniency. But if you are a for-profit and you're not paying, you need to make sure that you are heeding these guidelines. Okay? So without further, yes, Leonella, please, I think I saw a hand.
What if you have volunteers? Like, for example, I have volunteers that are professionals who want to practice their Spanish, and
Yeah,
they come regularly to my practices.
so that's a great question. And that's, you know, part of the alphabet soup we talked about earlier. If it's not linked, like if they're not looking to learn something specific or grow in a certain way that's like, you know, measured by them, and they're looking to get that exchange from it, and if they're freely volunteering because they're just getting something for themselves, right? There's a personal interest as well as helping the social mission. If you're a for-profit and you have a whole bunch of volunteers, you know, we should probably talk about that as a model, because I'd need to learn, Leonel, without giving you guidance, without knowing enough about your business model. But I would, if that's a main thrust, that, and maybe they become more actively involved in some way, then we might need to revisit that answer. But if they're just freely volunteering their time and they're getting something that's not linked to a learning objective for them, it's usually okay. But I would probably want to get a little bit more information to properly respond to that. Thank you for the question. Okay. How's everybody doing?
Let's
Go
see if
ahead.
we can wrap up the last few slides, and then we'll go to all questions.
Awesome. All right, let me go back here. Okay, so an oversimplified way to sort of interpret fact sheet number 71 is to make sure that the internship benefits the intern more than your company, at least to start. So you're like, oh, geez, well, it has to benefit me too. It must benefit you, my friends, or I wouldn't recommend it as a growth strategy. And it needs to very quantitatively benefit the young person in the ways that we described. And you can refer back to that sheet. So this is really helpful. I know we already scratched the surface, but having clear job descriptions, just like you were bringing on an employee, is a great practice for you to get into the habit anyways. Job descriptions for the intern. And I would suggest one thing that makes a job description for an intern different than a regular employee is that there are specific learning objectives. That will help you be really crystal clear, and hopefully there'll be no confusion from you to the intern and vice versa. Have a job description that includes their specific learning objectives. Of course, those need to forward your goals. I'm not suggesting that you just get busier. Everything we're talking about here needs to also result in an ROI. You also need to build in time for training and mentorship, or it's not going to work. And then, as we talked about, focusing on the purpose gap as a strategy to attract and retain, How frustrating is it when you're so excited, maybe you've even hired the person, whether it's an intern or an employee, and you don't retain them for reasons you don't know. Right? So that's a bigger conversation, but the idea of attracting and retaining young talent, great to practice through developing the right internship program. All right, moving along. So you're probably wondering, well, where the heck do I start? I just want to say for the record that, you know, I really acknowledge you as fellow entrepreneurs, everybody here. Like, it can feel in entrepreneurship like we're just like this, right? Like trying to like stay above water, right? And just know that we have each other as entrepreneurs. So especially through the, the Entrepreneur Forever community, but start where you are. Make sure you're giving yourself credit for everything you've done. I just want to say something quickly about, this is not my concept, but I want to put it out there. There's actually a book in this name, The Gap and the Gain. Oftentimes, especially as entrepreneurs, we are all about what we haven't done yet, how far behind we are. OMG, what's wrong with me? I can't put it together. How is it almost November? that kind of gap thinking, I'm seeing Maria's like, that kind of gap thinking. So first of all, you're not alone. Okay. It's very typical, but I want to encourage you when you start to think from that sort of deficit, oh my gosh, I'm so behind, right? And trust me, I get it. Take a hot minute to look over your shoulder and to say, wow, you know what? Look how far I've come. Pick one thing that you've done that you've done. You weren't there last year at this time. So remember, when you go into the gap thinking, look back and say, wow, I've gained so much, whether it's learning or income or a new partner, whatever the case may be. You've come a long way. So start where you are. Make sure you're acknowledging yourself for all that you've accomplished, even one thing. Like rock on, what's one thing I want to acknowledge myself for? At the end of every day as entrepreneurs, we should be acknowledging ourselves for something. You are not alone, although it can feel like you're alone. So if you want to just start to think about, just map this out, guys, even if you're just using, old school paper, right? Sometimes I just break out the notebook and you want to think about like, okay, let me identify what might be the purpose, the reason for me to even think about having an internship program. Why the heck would I want to do that? Right? And if you want to take, just 5 seconds, if there's something that just comes to mind, why the heck would you want to have an internship program? What could it accomplish for you? From there, you have a little more purpose. So now you're working toward a goal. Then you start to plan. What's it going to take? Start to assemble a team. Even if you're not in a position to do some crazy hiring, right? You can still imagine, is it a colleague from Entrepreneurs Forever that's also thinking about this as a growth strategy? Is there somebody that you could kind of bring on as an advisor, right? Are there people to follow up with to assemble your team? If you have a little bit of a larger organization, you want to make sure you're getting that internal buy-in. So you're not looking to just force a program on somebody that it's like, hey, this is more work. We don't have time for this. So you want to assemble that team, even if it's a small team. I would say have like 3 people, yourself and maybe 2 other people that you can start to noodle this through with. Rolling out your program and processes. Start small, one area, but I would suggest 2 interns. If you have 2 interns, they can collaborate, help each other, and they can together meet and bring back new ideas to you. It's a great strategy. I suggest between 2 and 10 interns, starting small. So 2 is a good number. And then you want to assess the progress of your program, just like any other program you're doing. Look back at the key performance indicators. How will you know that you will have succeeded? What are you accomplishing with this program that you weren't accomplishing before? And of course, you want to improve it. Get feedback from the young person. They are a wealth of information and ideas. And then I do want to say, guys, because again, fellow entrepreneur, I've come up with a solution. And this is where I told Deborah, I'm like, I don't want to be like this sales pitch here, but I do want to let you guys know that I've thought through this in so much detail. And I'm so jacked up about what we're doing to help small businesses, busy organizational leaders, to help set up and run a sustainable internship program that's going to be a little bit different for each organization, right? It needs to be customized, needs to have ROI. It needs to work for you. So we basically come up with a membership called the Internship Insider Membership, which is a super time and cost-effective way rather than like a consulting contract. It's just an easy way for people to have the professional support that you might want if this is a good fit for you and your organization. We do have, I don't know if it's worth clicking on this or this is what it looks like, guys, if you want to go back. And the best thing is if any of this interests you, if you have questions after today, just be sure to get back in touch with me and I will be more than happy. Just reference that we met also on this call. That would be helpful. And I want to open it up to everybody here. So I would love to know, and Deborah, if you want to jump in here, I would love to know, what was something that really stood out? What did somebody...
So Amy, why don't you stop sharing?
Yes.
So we can see each other. I want to say thank you, and I'm going to stop recording.
Okay, great.